And we're live, and we're 11 minutes late. I was talking to these guys before we started, and we were saying this is like fashionably late, like Tesla and Elon always is. So this is why it is. Welcome to Tesla Talks, folks, the Tesla Talks podcast. Another week, we're back with some exciting, pretty exciting Tesla news this week. I mean, everyone thinks with the shutdown and the pandemic going on that news would be scarce in the Tesla world, but it isn't. It isn't. Just like previous weeks, we got a lot of Tesla news coming to us. I want to introduce our guest. I don't know why he looks like he's muted. Maybe he isn't. But I want to introduce our special guest tonight, Aaron Brighton. I hope you don't mind if I say your last name, seeing it's all plastic there. Brighton.
Somewhere here.
Yeah, oh, there. Welcome to the podcast. I almost called you Ryan. Aaron. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. And of course, we have Franklin, Mother Frunker. He seems to be the, what did I call you last week? I called you the Ed McMahon of the show. Now, you guys may not know what that is, depending on your age group, but thanks for coming on again, Franklin.
Yeah, always glad to be here.
Yeah, I
think I say that every week. You're always like, thank you for coming. I'm like, yeah, always glad for being here.
Yeah. And you know what? Like I've always said to you off air, we're all friends off air for the most part. And I've always said to Franklin, never feel compelled that you have to come on this. I ask you every week or every now and then, and you're more than welcome. But you're also, at the same time, you're more than welcome. I understand you have busy lives and families and everything. So you're more than welcome to, say you can't do it this week. But Franklin, he's a trooper. He keeps coming back. Glutton for punishment, I guess.
Yeah, there's more punishment. You know what it is? I like showcasing the random backgrounds for all the special guests.
Yes.
Truthfully.
I see you have a special one there tonight.
I didn't make this. Aaron, you want to explain my background?
Sure. Okay. So you have a car there, and clearly our profile photos.
Yes. Yeah, a little background for anyone that's listening at home and they can't see it if you're not on YouTube. It was the thumbnail for the YouTube live picture, and all it is a nice, clean Model Y. I think it's from the actual studio from the website, and it says Tesla Talks podcast. And Aaron took it, and I
had to fix it.
Yeah, and he put our logos inside the car, and he put himself in the backseat. Now, why the backseat? You like the backseat?
Well, apparently, I don't have the right to be back there. That's Mark's spot.
Yes, you don't have clearance for the backseat. Yes. Okay.
So we talked about it briefly off air. It's really nice. I always try to create pictures for the guests. And this week is like the first week in forever where the guests did it for me. So thanks, Aaron.
Yes.
Appreciate it. And I put so if you guys look behind Aaron, you guys can see on it. If you're looking towards him, it's his right shoulder. He has a board and it has text.
So if you ever want to buy a second Tesla,
yes,
and you don't want to use your own code, if you can do that, use mine.
Shameless plug. But that's excusable in our podcast because we're all friends here. And if it's not as legible behind Aaron's shoulder there, Franklin's been nice enough to put it in his screen cap. Now, people at home, if you're listening to this on the audio podcast, which, like I said every week, and I'll remind you guys again, you can stream us live in your car. Not live, sorry. You can stream us in your car with TuneIn Radio. It's in any Tesla, or unless you didn't pay for the subscription, but that was last week. Or you can get it on your mobile device, like everyone has these days on Apple Podcasts, for your listening pleasure. So if you're listening to it, you probably don't understand what we're talking about. So I'll try to, paint a picture as best as I can, or these guys will try to paint a picture for our audio listeners. But if you can, the best way to do it is on YouTube because you get the whole 3D visual effects and experience from it. And in this case, with all the codes and everything going on, and we're not saying use the codes, folks. It's all tongue in cheek and it's all in fun. But for the few people that are watching us live, and we try to do this, I'd love to, like I said earlier, I'd love to get an exact date, an exact time every week, but right now we don't. So if you happen to be watching this live, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions in the comments, just right below, just jot down a quick question. during the podcast. We usually say we're going to save it for the end, but you know what? During the podcast, we'll interrupt the podcast and just. I know Franklin's pretty good at monitoring the chat sessions there, and he'll or we will blurt out the question. We've got a couple questions, actually, some nice questions from Mr. Mark Lindsay. He sent me some questions, so we're going to be doing those a little bit later, unless Mark has any other questions throughout the podcast. I see that he's in there right now, listening to us. So, I'm trying to read as I talk to you guys. We're going to get right into the show. I just wanted to get the housekeeping out of the way. Once again, our special guest tonight is Aaron, and like we do as a tradition on every podcast, we just try to take a few minutes at the beginning before we get into the topics and just talk to the guests and just find out a little bit of background about the guests. And like I said, we don't go too deep into personal stuff. But Aaron, can you tell us just like what got you, like just a basic question, like what got you into Tesla in the first place?
Sure. So for a long time, I've the Model 3 is my first official car. I have title on, and I'd said for a long time that an electric vehicle will be my first car, and that was years before I even knew Tesla existed. And at the time, all your options were basically you could get like a smart car, right? And so when Tesla came around, it was clear that's a real car. And so I just basically waited for that when they unveiled the Model 3. Finally, there was something that was in my price range, and so I was basically a second day reservation holder. And then I picked up the car. Basically part of the first deliveries in Canada back in June 2018. June,
eh? Nice. Early June?
Yeah, June 2nd. So.
Oh wow.
Basically, right as they were coming into Canada, that was when they were really pushing the deliveries here.
That's awesome. Now, what can you tell us for people at home that don't know you too well? What kind of Model 3 you have? What trim?
Yeah, I've got the rear-wheel drive. It's a midnight silver.
Great choice color.
Yep. Long range. Yeah, it was the only model available at the time.
Yep. And that's why we all have the same, because we are all in the same boat for our limited options. But what was it? 5 colors at the time? 6 colors? I think they had the silver, right?
Yep.
That was the unicorn.
Someone was just asking me about that on Twitter today, if they're going to bring it back.
Oh, I saw a silver yesterday, actually. You don't see them very often, but I did see one yesterday.
No, there's one in my neighborhood that I see every now and then. I don't see it often, but it's one in my neighborhood I see.
If you guys could go back, would you pick the silver just for the sake of having that rare color?
It is a nice color. Aaron, what do you would you?
I'll be honest, I didn't really like the color. Yeah. I mean, it now that it's rare, it's obviously got some value to it. At least intrinsically at the moment. I don't know if it'll actually, show down the road in resale value. But I think it would be interesting to see if the Model 3, 30, 40 years from now, whether these are valuable cars, because they are sort of the first mass market EV that the general public actually want, right? Yeah. So it will be interesting.
Sorry, I'm laughing because you're right. It's the first EV that the public actually wants. It's huge.
And you know what? I totally understand what he means when he says that. But for someone that doesn't, it may come across like snobbish or pretentious. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I totally know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyone that knows Aaron, he's not that type of person at all. But
I don't know how to put that, but that's just the way. Because the fact is, Chevy put out the Volt, which was a really, really great plug-in hybrid. And when it comes to the full electric market, there really weren't a lot of options before the Model 3 came out. You had the Bolt that was out, but it was in such a low volume that if you wanted to get your hands on one, you were waiting 6 months, right?
And I know it's personal preference, but the Bolt looks ugly in my opinion. I think also the fact that the supercharger network was up and running, which is a huge difference for it being like the first mass-produced car that people actually want, because it's no longer like, hey, can I go from point A to point B? It's like, there's no problems, right? So I think that makes a huge difference.
that's the big question that people have, right? Is, you know, where do I fill this up? And you know, even like I've done a test drive of a Jaguar I-Pace, and I asked that question to them, to the sales guys, and they can't answer the question. It's a very awkward question for them to answer, but it's a common question that people are going to have. So like, if you want to bring an EV into the market, if you don't have a reliable and usable charging infrastructure for getting around doing road trips, then it's going to be really hard to sell unless somebody's looking for just a commuter vehicle, right?
Yeah, you got to wonder how many times, like the question that you asked to the Jaguar people, or the Chevy people, or Nissan, or any of the other small EV companies out there. You got to wonder how many times those salespeople get asked that question, because if they've done their homework and they know about EVs, they have to know what you're talking about. And you got to wonder, like, oh God, here's that question again. You got to wonder if that's running through their head, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we quickly, briefly talk about Model 3 money?
Well,
I mean, we're here talking about Aaron anyway. I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah. Sure. I was, you know what? I was gonna save it for later, but while we're on the topic, you wanna.
Sure. Is there anybody that can I share my screen? I can. Hold on.
I think you can. Let me just.
Sorry, I didn't know if you want to save it for later.
No,
I figure we're here talking about Aaron, and why not?
For anyone that doesn't know, Aaron is a master. He's, how long ago was it? Last year, sometime last year, you put together this cost of ownership or cost comparison. And
yeah,
for anyone that didn't see it, like he crunched all the numbers. He actually put it together. Now, frankly, you're probably better to explain how he put it together than I am.
Like Lego.
Can you see it now on the?
Yep, I can see it.
Yeah. So basically, one thing that I usually, when I talk to people and I'm trying to explain, why, like, I think a really strong selling point of the car is, looking at it from the finance standpoint, because for like, when you try to sell to people, you're either trying to like appeal to some emotional need or to some financial need, right? And if you can sell the financial part, then you've solved the like logical problems or logical objections that people might have, like, oh, it's out of my price range. And I think a Tesla already sells to the emotional need. It's a great looking car. People think it's a luxury car, right? So that's, not many people are going to argue that, oh, it's an ugly car, or like some people will, but I think that's, a limited group of people. But there's a lot of people that are going to say, I can't afford it, right? We hear that all the time as Tesla owners. Hey, but your car costs $150,000, right? That's like, no, not really. So I usually talk to people or try to convince them of the cost savings standpoint, and it gets really complicated. So like, if you try to really explain, total cost of ownership to somebody, it can get very vague, and especially when you're talking about it from a standpoint of like, oh, well, in 3 years you'll have saved money. So I try to, most people finance their car, myself included, and and so usually when we talk about total cost of ownership, we're talking about, like, if you bought it in cash, when would it sort of pay for itself, and that's like, most people, it's really hard to relate to that if you finance the car, because most people are looking at it like, what's my cash flow going to look like if I get this car?
That's all they care about. Yeah.
And so that's what I usually try to push in that. So I built this calculator to try to simplify that for people. Right now, it really only works more for like the Canadian audience, because everything in here is like the Canadian numbers. But it's the same sort of concept. So I put some like pre-filled cars here. So you have like a Ford Fusion, a Mercedes C-Class, a BMW 3 Series. These two are sort of in-class cars when comparing to the Model 3. But the Ford Fusion obviously is not.
Quick, for anyone wondering, it's model3.money. So you go to that on your web browser, and you get access to all this.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. So yeah, so the numbers here. So right now, the Mercedes C-Class, you can kind of see here that the Model 3 is gonna beat it on its on the monthly payments if you finance it, and if you bought it with cash, it's gonna beat it as well on the total cost of ownership. The Ford Fusion, not quite as clear. cut as the Mercedes C-Class, but if you bought it in cash, then the Model 3 would make up for it, but the Ford Fusion. But it's still very close, right? Like you're looking at this, you're comparing a Ford Fusion to a Model 3, and the monthly cost, again, this is in Canadian dollars, it's pretty much the same, right? So if somebody is looking at buying like I think it's, what is this, a $28,000 vehicle, MSRP, and or you could buy a model at whatever it is. In Canada, it's 55,000 or something, the SR Plus. You're getting a much nicer vehicle for like the same price, right? So it's almost like a no-brainer. If you're going to buy something in this price range, you can afford the Model 3, right? And you can obviously tweak this. This is based on averages. So most people drive 20,000 kilometers a year. This is the actual MSRP price, but you could adjust that as well. You could basically put in the numbers for your own vehicle that you're looking at buying, and just ignore the numbers up here that are like pre-filled. And so I find this really, really helpful to sort of show to people, if you're looking at buying car X, like a Ford Fusion, put its numbers in here, and you can see, how much more or how much less would it cost you to buy a Model 3 from a monthly standpoint. That's including your cost of gas, your cost of maintenance, your cost of your actual loan payment and the interest on it and everything. That's all being calculated here. So yeah. I find this kind of a helpful tool for
it is.
That.
It's an awesome tool, and I'm surprised. I'm just biased, but I haven't seen anyone else do it. But so I'm surprised no one has done it before you. And yeah, it's one of those things that people just don't understand. They look at whether it's sticker shock or not, they just look at the sticker price and they don't take into consideration the other factors like you mentioned, like gas and maintenance and stuff like that. And you really for the total cost of ownership, you got to take that into consideration. And I love what you did with the site. Once again, it's model3.money. Anyone watching this probably already owns a Model 3. For the very few that don't, and they're still maybe on the fence, go to that website, plug in the numbers. Like Aaron has made it so dead simple that you can edit. It's very editable, and you can just change the numbers, like he says, to look at the car or compare the car that maybe you're looking at comparing it to.
Just another use for it. The number of times where I showed people my car, and then like, wow, this is really cool, but I can't afford this. And I literally just pop up his website on the web browser
in the car.
In the car.
Yeah, that's great in the car, true.
Obviously, now it's hard to do it. Social distancing, they have to like stand outside the window to look in, but you know what I mean. They're there looking at the amount of money that they can basically save, or the price difference between the car they're looking at versus the Model 3, and they're looking at it on the web browser inside the car. Like, you can't get better advertising than that.
No, you can't. No, it's so true, and that's probably what the site is more geared to. And I don't know if that's the whole reason you did it, Aaron, for owners or potential owners, but for potential owners to go to that website and to have it just dumbed down for them. Because here's what I think. I think whenever you tell someone that, you try to tell them, well, have you considered gas? Have you considered maintenance and stuff? They don't, because you know what? I think what's ingrained in everyone's head from whenever they first started driving, whether it was in their teens or their early 20s to however old they are, it's a social thing that's ingrained in everyone's head. You buy a car, you have to put X amount away for gas and X amount away for insurance. So they automatically think that that's a given. But when you try to explain to them, wait, take gas out of it, because that's not a factor anymore. And then the next question usually is, well, what about electricity? Because people think it's so expensive for electricity, but
it's cheap. You just get hamsters running on a wheel. Yeah, it costs you nothing. Yeah.
You joke, but really, if you go the route of solar or some kind of renewable, then it's even another level of savings, right?
Well, it's really amazing, like how many people, especially based on the amount they drive, right? Like if you live in a major city area, you're probably living in like a suburb, and you may work in the city. So if your daily commute's like 80 kilometers, I don't know what that is in miles, but if that's your daily commute, it's almost guaranteed that you're gonna save money by getting a Model 3 versus buying a $30,000 vehicle. And if you like one of our friends, Mark, if he if you're like him and you're driving around all the time for your job, the amount of money you save it's crazy. It can be cheaper than buying a used vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
He said that the
Buying
money he's saved is like extra money in his pocket each month that he never had before, and that's once he covers everything just from the amount he drove before, gas and all savings.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does definitely adds up. Like Bucci said in the comments, the more you drive, the more you save.
That's exactly what I tell people.
I try to pitch it to Uber drivers or Lyft drivers or taxi drivers, because for them, it's a no-brainer. Like, they're literally upgrading from whatever they have, regardless of what kind of vehicle it is, and they're saving money.
Yeah.
Like one guy I was talking to, he could save $1,500 a month. That's $1,500 more per month in his pocket if he got a Model 3.
So,
I
was reading an article. Sorry, Dax, to throw this on you because he doesn't have it. I don't remember where it's from. They were basically saying that is today or yesterday. They said Tesla owners generally drive more. So if you buy a Tesla, you're going to drive way more than before. I guess partly because you're not spending money. Like, you are spending it, but you're not spending as much. So you see those savings. Yeah. That was one of the reasons why they accounted to driving more. I personally think because you just kind of love driving again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
But it is true, and I would take it one step further, and we're going to get off this topic and start the actual news in a second. But we'll let you guys finish off your points. But what I was going to say is one step further. It's not even Tesla drivers, because before my Model 3, I had another electric car, a Kia Soul EV, and I can tell you, I made the mistake. It worked out in the long run, but I made the mistake originally of leasing that car. And I had a limited kilometers or limited mileage, and I love driving that car so much, and it saved me so much money by, like we were saying earlier, driving, that I went over. I was getting close to going over the allotted mileage that I had it for the 3-year lease, that I had to actually slow down and drive the gas car just so I didn't go over when I traded it in. Worked out in the long run. I never had to trade it in. I ended up selling it, but yeah, it's like. And that was an electric car, but I just love driving it. And when you can drive an electric car, you choose to do it, especially if you're in a family like me where you have one electric car and one gas car. So on weekends, what car are you going to take? Unless you need the gas car, if you have a choice, you're going to take the electric car because it's cheaper. Why wouldn't you? It's a no-brainer.
One last thing Mark brings up. He says, is there any external costs like insurance that might differ for Tesla versus other companies in Canada? My experience for insurance, I actually saved $400-500 a year when I switched from my old car to a Tesla.
Yeah, and
my insurance went down quite a bit.
That's awesome. Yeah. People think that it's going to be more expensive, or some people just don't know. And I actually had this question from somebody I was talking to just last week, and and once again, insurance is one of those things that it's so subjective, because it differs depending on every person and their situation. It depends on their driving record, depends on where they live. So there's so many different variables for insurance. But in a nutshell, what I tell people is, yeah, you pay a little bit more because it's a higher end car and it costs more to repair if you get, heaven forbid, you get into an accident. But that's the way insurance companies they do it. They do it on a risk scale, but it comes down cheaper because it's a safe vehicle. And it, like in most insurance companies, Tesla's check off in every safety category and give you every kind of safety discount there is possible. So you go up a little bit, but then you come down a little bit. So it ends up being the same amount as a comparable car in its class.
Yeah, give or take, depending on whether you're up or down. Yeah, it's the best way to explain it. A car to fix is relatively cheap in comparison to fixing a human. So, I mean,
exactly.
Yes.
So true. So true. Well, thanks for that, Aaron. I appreciate you giving us a little insight in your background with Tesla and stuff like that, and how you love it so much that you actually went out and made that website. Thanks for that. And once again, Model3.money. Anyone that has to or wants to convince a friend or family member or coworker or something, and they want, and it's not even a matter of convincing, but just to show them the light type of thing.
You have that referral code handy. You have your friend who's on the fence. Show them Model 3 money.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So I got you the whole advertisement video.
Yes, and that wraps up another episode of. No, just kidding.
So
yes, we are 24 minutes in, and let's start the news.
Cybertruck
Yeah, the first one, we're going to talk about the Cybertruck Gigafactory and Elon and his tweets this week. This article is brought to us by our friends at Electrek. Basically, just talking about Elon was, just like last week and just like previous weeks, he's been pretty prevalent on his social media outlet of choice, which happens to be Twitter, and only Twitter, it seems. And he's talking about this Cybertruck Gigafactory. And some people, if I scroll down here, were asking him about the Gigafactory. And this guy named Alex Bitten was speaking about Austin, because I guess the further up in the conversation chain they were talking about Austin. Is Giga Texas still on the table? And Elon, like he always does, one word answer, yes. And then it continued a little further on, and Fred Lambert, the person that does the whole electric thing, he started asking to clarify about the U.S. factories and Model Y production, because Fred had asked him months before that, sometime last year. They got into conversation about Elon saying how the Model Y for East Coast people would be in the same factory. It'll be manufactured in the same factory as the Cybertruck if he could have it his way. So he was asking him, is it going to be on the East Coast, or is it going to be somewhere central type of thing? And he said it's going to be on the East Coast. Elon replied and said former. In this case, it said former, but if you read the whole thing, the whole sentence, he's talking about that. So, and then further down, another person named K10 asked him Model Y factory East, or I guess once again asking him East Coast still. And Elon says, it needs to be more than halfway to the East Coast. So it shows that Tesla understands that they need to address that little gap of how they are, not a little gap, it's a big gap, how they're basically right now on the West Coast, and they need to save money by putting something either central or on the East Coast to, I guess, fill that gap.
And he said all that in 11 words.
Yeah, I know, and I turned it into like a 5-minute spiel. Yeah. But look at it, like articles. This is just electric, but so many other outlets that wrote articles about it, because that's what happens with Tesla, especially with Elon, right? He says just a few words, but people
could have stopped at just yes, and you would see like
1,000-page
articles created about this factory and so in-depth stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
I gotta start tweeting like that. Maybe I'll grow in popularity. Maybe that's my problem. Just gotta start replying yes.
Is it?
I don't know. It's quiet, Dax.
No, I'm not saying anything. I was talking that whole thing. Did you guys not? I didn't even notice. Can you guys not see the screen capture? Is it not showing up there?
Yeah, we see the former.
You see it? Okay, it's not showing up on my end. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, but on top of that, you guys want to comment on the East Coast part of it while I
so
get the other part ready?
Selfishly, I want the next Gigafactory to be as close as possible to Ontario.
Yeah.
So we get deliveries a little quicker.
We all do, right? We all do.
Yeah, because there's definitely a gap. Like, all jokes aside, there's definitely a gap, right? And it's not like a super long time for them to send cars here. So mine took 3 weeks.
Yeah, I know. We complain, the poor people in Europe and Australia, they're like probably cursing us right now, saying, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, I get it. And, yeah, there's definitely a gap, right? And I think just selfish reasons, that's why I want it more east. But Austin makes a lot of sense. For those who've never been to Austin, it's like another Silicon Valley in the making. It's such a large little tech industry that's booming there. Yeah. So to have something like Tesla pop up with a plant, offer jobs, you're going to get a whole bunch of tech people who obviously can probably afford the higher trims, right? So now Tesla's making more money, and it's just like such a good area to have a plant in, just economically, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, other than Austin, if I was to ask you guys, name one other city or town or state, and you can go leaning towards the east if you like, where else would you think, not where do you want it, but where else do you think they would put it?
Way to word that question. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, well, they did say, so I think it's Joplin, Missouri, was offering up $1 billion worth of incentives for Tesla to open up a factory there. So I think that's going to be a big driving factor. It's starting to get into that kind of where like Amazon had done this, right? Amazon had, said they're going to create another headquarters in the U.S. and all these states and cities started, throwing money at Amazon basically for them to set up and shop in their own city or state. And so we're seeing the same thing happening with Tesla, which is, really awesome when it comes to, Tesla being recognized as a viable, company, by governments around the U.S. So I think that's a really good sign as to where they're going to set up shop. I think the incentives are going to play a big role, but at the same time, I think Tesla doesn't really like all the paperwork they have to do and stuff. So if those incentives become things that get really long, drawn out process, they may ignore them, right?
Yeah. Well,
so Mark and I had the same idea. They should go with Detroit.
Detroit, yeah.
Take over legacy, out with the old and with the new. Just makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So Detroit. What would you guys think about Kansas? Wichita, Kansas? Anyone? Wichita?
Truthfully, the only thing I know about Wichita is not good. So
okay. Well, any of our Wichita listeners, I apologize on Franklin's behalf right there. The reason I bring up Wichita, and I'm sure it is an awesome place to live in the U.S., the reason I bring it up is because Wichita, and this is another article from Electric, and this actually came up today. It's one of the newest and freshest news. They put together a little package and a little presentation to put towards Tesla, and I won't play the video, but it's brought to you by the Greater Wichita Cybertruck. That's the channel, I guess. And they put together a little 30-second or 40-second video, and it was, like I said, I'm not gonna play for you, but go check it out. It's on YouTube and just search for Wichita Cybertruck, and you'll see this. It's almost like a retro videos, like 80s, in like a 8mm style thing, but it's pretty cool. They go through all the stuff that they can offer. Like they have an 800-acre site that they're willing to give up to Tesla. They have 2 railways nearby, so that's awesome for getting it across the country and everywhere, because that's important, right? Like you need either a port or some kind of a rail system. What else do they have? They're talking about highway interchanges and stuff like that, just less than 2 miles away from the site location. Electric substations available on site. Plus a bunch of money too. I can't remember exactly the money that they were talking about, but it sounds like a pretty lucrative thing. Like Aaron was saying, Joplin was pretty enticing. Well, Wichita, I think they've just entered the race. But like Aaron was saying, incentives is one thing, and that's a big thing. But I think Elon, I forget what article or if it was an interview, I remember hearing him talk about, and he said, yeah, incentives are good, but there's more to it than just incentives. He named a bunch of different things, and he said the workers in that particular city or town, they have to have some kind of a skill. And Wichita was saying that they have a very good skilled workforce for this kind of stuff. So I don't know.
Okay, also let me backtrack a little bit. The event I know that happened there was like not their fault, just a news event, right? But in terms of Wichita, no. It was a shooting a number of years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what I always remember. That sticks out to me. But anyway, that's not important. In terms of their offer, it does look enticing, and it's kind of like what we talked about the last few weeks, where you're going to see more and more of these over time that like look even better. Not to say what they're offering isn't great, like it's fantastic. It's just like maybe we'll see someone even up it now, like because they really want Tesla to have their next factory there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying, like, even Mark posted in the chat, he was talking about Boulder, Colorado, which is another tech hub for software talent. I think you kind of want it in a place where you have that special skill that you're saying. And software talent's like such a big one, right? So you have like these little markets of software skill popping up. So like realistically, if he did do one in Canada, you're looking at either Vancouver or Montreal. Like I can't see Toronto being a location.
It is interesting. Like with Canada, you know, a lot of other manufacturers set up their manufacturing facilities here because cost of living is, you know, quite a bit lower here compared to the U.S. when you factor in the exchange rate. And so it would be interesting to see, you know, whether he seriously considers it in the future. I'm not sure how much of, you know, getting the cars across the border is a problem. You know, they obviously have a workflow to get the cars into Canada, but I'm not sure if it's, you know, just as easy to get them out of Canada. You also have to think about, you know, supply chain, where all their product, like all the parts and stuff that come to the cars. So they already have that figured out, getting them to the US.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it becomes that much more complicated to get all those parts into Canada. But yeah, I think for the factory, like the incentives are great, and I'm sure Tesla's going to take advantage of them in their selection process. But for sure, they're probably going to look at, you know, the things that allow them to move quickly first as the primary drivers. So, you know, things like access to a railroad that can get them across get the cars out across the country, and then, you know, yeah, like as we discussed, like the talent, having, you know, the workforce in place and so on.
Yeah, that's huge. I think at the end of the day, I think Tesla now, I think the ball's in their court. They have all these lucrative offers at their disposal. It's just a matter of them picking one. And I think at the end of the day, no matter which one they pick, they're obviously going to piss some people off and you know, make some others happy. But whoever they pick, I mean, money wise, from a financial point of view, I don't think they can lose. I think they'll be set up pretty good. It'll just be the other factors like we just talked about.
I imagine too that wherever they do set up, that's going to attract talent to that location, right?
True.
So they can realistically set up anywhere, and people are going to go because it's
Tesla.
You know, it's Tesla. It's a job opportunity. It's looks good on a resume, whether they're long term, short term, doesn't matter. Like, it's a great opportunity for anyone who's interested in Tesla or working there, right?
Yeah, and you think these towns and cities don't know that? That's probably exactly what they're thinking too, right?
Okay, there is a difference between made in China and made in Canada, MIC. Okay, I'm just going to point that out there. Thank you, Mark, in the chat.
What are you saying about China?
Okay, moving right along. Our next topic, once again, at the beginning is a little electric heavy, but we'll get into other outlets in a little bit. But the long wait, I guess, you know what? This one, I want to say the long and awaited and anticipated release of the traffic light and stop sign control. But it wasn't actually as long as some of the others. Like, some of the others were talked about and teased and stuff like that, and were put into betas and early access and stuff like that. And it stood there for weeks and months and stuff like that. This one, it was just a few weeks ago that we saw that it in some early access people's hands, and it finally was released last week to the masses. 2020.12.6 software update, and it brings to I guess almost every Tesla that has a hardware, sorry, not hardware, AP2. It brings AP2, but also hardware 3. It brings the stopping and traffic lights and stop sign control. Now, I have and we won't go into the whole ins and outs about it, because anyone that's listening obviously knows about it and has seen the countless videos all over the place already on how it works and stuff like that. What I want to know from you guys, and I'll tell you my opinion in a little bit, but I want to know from you guys, what do you think of it in its first initial release? We know it's going to get better, like anything else. It's in its infancy stage now, but what do you think about it right now? Aaron?
So it's pretty rudimentary right now. It looks like they've taken, you know, what they already sort of have in place. Like we've seen, we don't have it in Canada, but we've seen in the US, you know, the where it can detect a red light coming up, and it like will warn you on the screen. So it sounds like they've just now, you know, flipped the switch to actually take action on that kind of thing. Yeah. When it detects it. And like from what I was reading in that article there that you're sharing, and also from the videos that we've seen, you know, it doesn't go. It does the stopping, but it doesn't, you know, pick back up when the light changes to green. You have to tap on the accelerator to tell it that, you know, the light's changed to green. So it's it's pretty rudimentary, I think, at the moment, but
Yeah.
it's a good first step, I think, to start releasing more of those FSD features that work, in the city. I think it's also interesting because Tesla's always sort of taken the stance that you shouldn't use autopilot on city streets, right? It's only meant for major highways or for highways.
Yeah.
And now they've specifically, released a feature that's, some highways have, traffic lights and stop signs, but the major highways don't. And the fact that they're releasing a feature that's probably more useful in cities is almost like, I guess, like a green stamp on Tesla's part to, allow to sort of say like it's okay, you can use autopilot on city streets now. So I think that's interesting.
I like the word you use, rudimentary. That's a good description of it. And when you're talking about the green lights, stopping at green lights, we're going to get back to that in a second, but I want to hear Franklin's take on it.
I think it's pretty similar to navigation on autopilot. So we use nav on autopilot right now, and we see like, wow, it's like, I think it's a lot better than what it used to be. It's still not perfect, but it's like miles better than when it was released in October of 2019, I believe it was. So like in just over a year's time, a year and a half time, it's 6 to 18 months. In the last 18 months, it's improved like a lot. So we're looking at this new feature like as if we saw navigation on autopilot 18 months ago, where if you guys remember, it was like stock confirmation constantly. That was our only choice. It wasn't always sure of itself. It wouldn't change lanes like as fluid as it would now. Sometimes it like swerve back.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So if you remember all those situations when navigation on autopilot came out, people were like, wow, this is never going to work. This feature's useless. It's no good. And I feel like we're like,
careful. Some people still to this day think it's useless. I hate to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right though. And those people would be wrong. I'll say it right now. But if you look at where it went a year and a half ago to where it is now, it's drastically different. It's drastically improved, right? So I think if you're taking this new feature in its initial release and you're basing it off of that, it'll be incorrect because it's exponential growth, right? Karpathy did a really interesting video about AI and autopilot. Definitely check it out. It went into really good detail about like just stop signs, for example. He talked about stop signs. It was a 30-minute video. He talked about stop signs for probably like 15 minutes out of the 30. Like just the different types of stop signs.
Yeah.
And you don't really think about it until you're actually like presented with all the different stop signs. It's like, oh wow, there's this many.
Yeah.
So
every
if you
time
think
you kept saying a new one, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like you have a person holding it up. Whether it's up or down makes a difference. On a sign, on a fence that's swinging, construction workers, poles, up in this, like there's so many different things. And then the big one was if it's blocked by something like trees or whatever it may be. So if you like factor in what the car is able to do right now, what's in its first initial state, is pretty amazing. And knowing it will only get better, and I think it's going to get better quicker now than when we had navigation on autopilot. Because navigation on autopilot only had like 500,000 cars to work with. Now there's over 1 million cars to work with, so you literally have like double the data entry that you can potentially grab.
That's a good point.
So it's mostly if you're driving right now and your car's not like, if it's just functioning fine, you don't see anything crazy. You're not sending anything back to Tesla. The biggest ones, from my understanding, is if you see any like flickers on the screen, or remember when the cars used to dance?
Yeah.
So anything like that, that's when Tesla's not confident in what they're seeing, and that's when the data is supposed to get sent back to them. Again, this is all based off the Karpathy video, which makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. Karpathy did mention something else in the video, which was interesting. So even if the car is, so like you said, it sends stuff when it's unsure of things, but they said they can also use the fleet to try to optimize and train their algorithm. So if they see, certain things that they want to get, so if they see like a stop sign obscured by a tree, they can take that snapshot, describe it, push it out to the fleet, and ask the fleet, if you see something similar to this, send it back to us so we can get a bunch of variations of what an obscured stop sign looks like.
That's awesome.
And I think we're going to see a lot of these things quicker. So everything is tagged manually, but tagging is going to be automated. So once it's automated, they can literally like start pumping out things way quicker, and things are going to improve at a much rapid pace. So we're going to see this feature go from like not the greatest to something like usable in a very short period of time. Wow. So like I've already seen articles, so many articles criticizing it, but I guarantee you those same writers, I mean, they're doing it for clicks, obviously, but the same writers, they're going to use the like opposite approach in like 6 months, being like, wow, look how amazing this feature is. You guys got to check this out, right? So
it's true. It's funny. You know what? They probably will. Well, my take on it, well, I'll be honest with you. When I first saw it and saw the videos and what people were talking about, and maybe because I had too much expectations and I had my hopes up, maybe that's it. So maybe it's my own fault. But I was a little disappointed with how you had to give it a nudge every single time, no matter whether it was red or green, and it came up to an intersection. You had to give it a nudge. And I saw Chris from Dirty Tesla. I saw his video, which was a really good video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And I get it. It's new, but there was a couple places in his video where it was like a double stop sign, just a short distance away, and it was pretty dangerous. If Chris wasn't paying attention,
ran right through.
It would have killed him if a car was coming the other way.
It was going to run the stop sign. Basically.
Yeah, and I get the whole what everyone's going to say is you got to pay attention. I get it, and you do. Even with 18-month-old Navigator on autopilot, right? You got to pay attention. So I get all that. It's just it was a little disappointing, but then I changed my mind again because then I saw the Carpathy video. And speaking of the 30-minute video, it's great. Just like Franklin said, watch the whole thing. But if you don't have time, Franklin did a great compromise or compressing of that 30-minute video into like a 10-minute video. And if you haven't seen his video yet, check it out because he does a good editing job and gets you all the good and important stuff in that video. And but after I saw that video, I was like, I was a little more excited. I'm like, okay, you know what? I could forgive them for what they put out because it's early stages and it's baby steps, and I get it, right? Pardon me. And it's still a learning curve. So I'll give them.
It's a learning curve, and unfortunately, people aren't going to read that they have to pay attention. And sooner or later, we're going to start seeing videos or pictures or whatever it may be, something in the media of someone who used it and is not using it properly. And we know where it's going to end. It's not going to be the user at fault. It's going to be Tesla at fault, just because it's easier to get people to click articles that way on just the way world we live in. And that's just because the feature is new and people aren't going to be like, oh, I have to actually pay attention, right? So I think because of the whole pay attention aspect, I think it's not a bad thing that you have to press the accelerator, because now you're not just kind of sitting back and relaxing, having the car do all this for you. It's like an initial step to get you weaned into the concept. True.
I hear you. And, like how we were saying that, it stops at the green lights, and Aaron had brought that up earlier. It's funny you bring that up because cue the Tesla shorts, and and it's on the same vein of what we're talking about. But if you're watching at home, I'll let you know this one's brought to you by our friends at Tesla Rotty. But they talk about how the short sellers are having a field day with this new update, and how they're talking about how bad it is and how dangerous it is. And I'm going to scroll down here to one of these. I apologize right now, folks, if I in this little discussion here, if I call one of these people idiots. I apologize, but
you know it's about to happen.
Yeah, maybe I don't have to apologize for my audience that's listening, but I just did it. I guess I just called someone an idiot. But this one guy, where is it? I think it's this one right here, and I probably should even give him the clicks, and I probably should even give him the notoriety or anything like that. But is this the one where? Yes. Not even going to go into what his Twitter name is and stuff like that. It's just he's a short. He's a well-known short, and he's talking about how this new feature is downright dangerous, and he has a moral obligation to, if he sees a Tesla on the road, to damage it or disable it, or sabotage it. It's like, are you kidding me? Like, he thinks, and I get what he's saying, and I'm going to play the devil's advocate for a second here. He's saying when you're going up to a green light, your car is going to brake for you, and people behind you aren't going to be expecting you to brake, and that's a potential dangerous situation and possibly cause an accident. So I see that point, but then for him to stretch it, to say that he needs to sabotage, and he says these cars should be outlawed, or what, there was a word that he used, basically taken back by the government. They should be, I forget what word it was that he used, and I don't have it here, and you guys can't see it anyways, because I clicked on the wrong link. But he said basically that they need to be, it's a dangerous idea, and it needs to be taken back. I forget, there was another word he used instead of taken back, and it's in the article here if you're reading it. But anybody's opinion on that, was how these shorts are having a field day on this update?
I can give you a comparable. September 30th of 2019, roughly, give or take a week, Smart Summon was released. There's a ton of articles at the time where they said Smart Summon is going to cause chaos. I'm actually doing a quick Google search here on the side. Going to cause chaos. It's drawing scrutiny. It's going to destroy parking lots. All sorts of stuff. Like, do you think this is like the worst feature ever released? Interesting enough, I cannot find an accident where like Smart Summon actually like drove into a car. The accidents that have happened have been when it's been a human person and Tesla, kind of like just an accident that would happen in a parking lot. So I guess you can draw a comparison where the shorts at the time then had like a field day with Smart Summon saying, "Oh, this is the worst feature ever. We're all gonna die with Teslas in the parking lot," and then it never really transpired.
Never really panned out.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember digging up some articles for, I think I was arguing with another short seller or something at some point a long time ago, which you should try to avoid doing if at all costs. But basically, if you go back to like the early 1900s when automobiles were just sort of getting on the road, it is like the horse-drawn carriage, time period where they're now transitioning to these automobiles.
Yeah.
There's the same articles were written back then about how dangerous these vehicles are, that now you can go 30 kilometers an hour or 40 kilometers an hour in these death machines.
It's true.
It's hilarious. I don't have the article in front of me, but you can just look them up. It's literally like almost word for word the same stuff that's being written today.
Yeah. I wonder if they were considered shorts back then. No, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's funny. The guys from Now, Zach and Jesse, probably last year or even a year before, did a little skit along the same lines of when the horse-drawn carriage was getting phased out by, like you said, the Model Ts and the gas cars and everything. And yeah, they did a little skit with them sitting on a porch and talking about pros and cons about it. And they're like, so you're going to put high flammable gasoline in this thing and then put it down the road, and then when it needs to be refueled, you're going to put stations on the side of the road with this high flammable thing. It was funny because you look back on it now and it's like, yeah, exactly what you're saying, Aaron.
Just an idea for you, Aaron. Just an idea for you, Aaron. Yep. You should do like horse versus ice versus EV, like a website, and it's like an article that matches all three. Like,
yeah, have to calculate how much the grain feed costs for the horse and so on. Yeah. Okay.
No. I didn't mean like expense. I mean just articles. So you can post like an article from back then versus an article today.
I see. All right.
So you can see comparison articles for different things. That should be kind of cool.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes. Moving right along, guys. We're gonna try to speed this up a little bit. Our next article, or our next topic, brought to us by our friends at Drive Tesla Canada. I told you it would change up a little bit. Tesla has a hidden pay-as-you-go FSD subscription plan in the source code. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've talked about FSD and the future of it and the pricing and stuff like that. And if you're not familiar, we all have our stance on it. And Franklin has a very good logical stance on it and how it's going to increase and why he justifies why it should increase. But this, and we're going to get to that. I think Franklin has a lot to say about this topic. But this was brought to us by our friend Green at Green the Only on Twitter, also known as Green. He's some kind of genius coder or anything, or decoder. He was answering one of the guys at Third Row Podcast, or Third Row Tesla Podcast. And I'm not going to read the question because it was a little long question, but his answer at the end of it, he says that there's code for pay-as-you-go subscription plan. It's been there for quite a while, waiting for the eventual time when it'll make sense, I'm sure. So he has found code in there, and like he said, it's been there for quite a while. And I guess Tesla's just waiting for the time where they're going to just flip the switch and bring it out. It's good to know that. Even though we've talked about it back and forth from week to week and thrown that idea around, it's good to know that they're actually, it's funny to think that they're actually talking about it. Or they're actually more than talking about it. They talked about it, and now they've implemented something, and they're just waiting for the right time. Franklin, I know this is an exciting topic for you. I know.
I love this topic.
Yeah, you do. What's your take on it?
So I think subscription makes a lot of sense because, as I said in previous weeks, and I'll say it again now, FSD itself, whether you want to use it for robotaxi or not, because I saw a lot of people say, like, I'm not going to use it for robotaxi. It doesn't matter. It's like saying you're not going to use the passenger seat. So should they charge you less because you're never going to use the passenger seat? I mean, it's part of the car, right? So it's part of your package. So the fact FSD can potentially make you 30,000 US a year, which is the number Elon threw out, at 50% usage, plus the other 50% of the time you have the car, where you might not necessarily need to own two cars now. You can own one and have it drive you around. By the way, I'm talking like when full self-driving comes out, complete A to B, no problems. I'm not saying timeline. I'm not saying when it happens. I'm just saying whenever it does happen, okay? Just so some clarity. The FSD feature itself is not going to be $10,000. I don't even think it's going to be 20. We're going to be looking at a much higher amount just because it's going to be it's going to be valued very high. And then I saw some people say, hey, it shouldn't be a premium feature. More people should have access to it. And it's like, I understand that perspective, but in life, anything that's premium is normally a cost money, right? So for them to have a subscription plan would make a lot of sense because people are saying, well, if what I'm saying is going to happen, it's going to become very expensive. People aren't going to be able to afford full self-driving, which is true. I don't think anyone's going to be owning a car in the future. It's going to be all subscription-based. So for Tesla to go subscription-based model, it's basically going to allow people to be able to afford full self-driving. And yeah, it's like having, as Mark says in the comments here, it's like having a private valet driver, right? Which I imagine wouldn't be cheap if you had one of those, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a really good idea because it kind of goes in line with what I'm saying. FSD is not going to be a cost that an average person is going to be able to afford one day. Yeah, Aaron, if you want to pitch in, jump in. What do you think? Disagree? Agree?
Well, I echo your thoughts completely, and I think it does, like most software packages out there feature most software packages these days are subscription models, and it makes sense because you need to continue to develop, you need to bug fix, you need to so on and so on, and from a subscription model standpoint, you can clearly like justify those costs, right? Whereas like upfront payments, if for some reason FSD gets so expensive or it gets to a point where people aren't buying it anymore, Tesla still has to maintain it. So I think like the subscription model makes sense on that from that standpoint. And I think it's a good thing as well because it'll probably open up the door for people to try it potentially in the future. If they don't open up a trial period for people, then at least you don't have to pay the full price, which might become extremely high once most of the FSD features are out there and people can actually commercialize on it. I think the subscription model makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw Mark's comment in there. He said that China already has it enabled.
Oh yeah.
You guys have heard that?
Oh yeah. I'm reading it right now. Yeah, I didn't know that.
That might make sense why it's in the code then.
Which would put a whole damper on this whole topic.
Well, I think the concept's cool too. I don't know what the price is. I'd love to know what it is.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you had to guess what a price would be here in North America.
I don't know what a fair price would be because we don't actually have access to a real full self-driving car.
True.
Right. So I think like the price right now is superficial. It's not a real price. That price will definitely change when we have access to a full self-driving car. Just touching on what Aaron was saying a little, really good example is Adobe. Okay. No, like Adobe Photoshop.
Oh, I thought you said Gobi. Sorry.
So yeah, Adobe. It's a really good example of software. So Adobe's never been cheap. Like their software suite and packages and stuff. And over time, they realized that they're better off switching to a subscription service. And so instead of charging, $700, $800, $900 for one piece of software, now you can charge $10 a month and get people into a subscription or $30 a month, whatever it may be. And
I'll add, no, I agree with you on where you're going with that comment. But the $700 or $800, what they were trying to charge that hardly anyone paid for, because that wasn't Photoshop one of the most pirated softwares of all time.
Yes, but you got to think that big businesses that had large amount of subscriptions were paying for it.
Oh yeah.
So all they did now is basically make less profit on large companies that have like tons of licensing, but they're now introducing to a huge, big, massive market. So I mean, if you take the same concept with Tesla, it might get to a price point where it's too expensive. So Tesla's not going to be making much money except for big businesses that run private fleets. And now they're able to appeal to the big, massive market by offering a subscription service for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to, at the moment, know what the actual monthly cost will be eventually when the features are available, right? But I think it will be in line with the upfront cost. So, if they keep both of them the same, right? If they give you the option to buy upfront and they give you the option to do the subscription, I don't know if they'll end up doing that. Maybe it makes things too complicated for them to manage like both of them. But it might be somewhat comparable to whatever, that full price would have been. So if it's like $20,000, then divide the $20,000 by, the number of months that, the lifetime of the car would be. And then, add a little bit on top of that to add the subscription premium. And then that's probably what you're gonna look at. So you might be able to get an idea of like what that subscription would cost right now by taking the whatever $10,000 costs and dividing it up. Or maybe you can just look at China. I don't know.
I want to backtrack to one of the comments. Don't know how to pronounce his name. HCW Hulan or something. My apologies. I just can't pronounce your name. He said, I've heard people said that no one will own a car. There are so many different reasons and reasons why people need cars, including special needs. So the whole concept of not owning a car isn't like you're going to like wait around for hours for a car to show up. The whole premise behind it is imagine like Uber, but like Uber on steroids, where you have like cars constantly driving around everywhere all the time.
On demand.
So you just call a car to you. So now you don't have to worry about maintenance. You don't have to worry about really anything. And your car just kind of comes to you whenever you need, right? So there's no real... obviously there's disadvantage in terms of like payments, because now you're going to continuously pay for a subscription, but eventually that's where it's going to be headed, just based off software costing way too much for consumers.
I see what he means though. There will be a percentage of some people that will be holding out and say, no, I need to own something. Just, the type of people that are out there right now already, that they're the type of people that they can't finance anything. They don't want to borrow money from bank. They have to own it. They have to say at the end of the day, on day one, they own it. There's those type of people out there, unfortunately, and I'm not criticizing them for that. That's just the type of people they are. And so there will be a small percentage of people that probably will buck the whole trend and system, and they'll want to own it, which I get. That'll probably be a small percentage, but yeah, I had to wrap my head around it when I first heard a couple years ago that nobody will own a car. You'll just have one whenever you need it. And I
like comparables. It's just really good to understand how things are moving.
Yeah.
So the video game market, which is like $1 billion market, right? They're moving away from physical copies to digital copies, and a lot of people like owning the physical copy because they're like to own something. And I know this is a bad example because it's like $70 versus several thousands, but the whole premise is people like owning physical items that they've paid for versus continuously renting it out. And I say but, the video game market's slowly converting over to digital, and the people who like owning physical copies, and I'm one of them, by the way, like I have a massive collection of games, doesn't have much of a choice. Like, it's just the way the market's headed. And
it's not a bad example, buddy.
Pardon?
I was sorry to cut you off. I was going to say it's not a bad example because myself, I went through that a few months ago when I was researching to buy my son an Xbox, and I had to decide: do I buy him the S, the one that just has a hard drive and no disk drive, or no like optical drive to put the actual discs in, or do I buy him one where you actually buy the games for, like you said, $50 or $70? And I actually researched it online and everything, and I finally went into EB Games and asked one of the people there, what are the pros and cons? And they brought up stuff that I wasn't even thinking about, like, yeah, if you want to trade the game in, but then they gave pros and cons for both sides, and I ended up buying the S, the one that doesn't have the optical drive. So,
and eventually that's all you're gonna have. But like, you're not gonna have much of a choice.
Well, right now I had to get a monthly subscription for my son to play Fortnite, and it's like $13 a month. And
what was the word you said? Starts with an S?
Yes, subscription, exactly. Yeah,
right.
It's where everyone's going, and and there's a whole discussion we can get into, the whole subscription overload, and how people are getting tired already of subscriptions, right? Like, if you look at the average person in a household, think of how many subscriptions they have already. And this is just the average people, not like people like you and me where we might have more than the average, but the average people have probably 3 or 4 subscriptions that they don't. And then some people might have subscriptions that they don't even use anymore, like just dormant subscriptions.
Yeah.
And we were kind of talking about the robotaxi fleet here, and I think it's a good thing that Tesla's doing to sort of hedge them against that risk of, people not owning cars in the future. And they don't have any competitors in this market, right? You have Lyft and Uber, but they require a driver, so they're always going to be able to undercut those competitors with their vehicles if they can, get the full self-driving in place. And so if the market is going that way, maybe they're the ones driving it that way with the robotaxi fleet, but they're hedging they're hedging that risk by releasing this feature, by releasing the robotaxi fleet, because no other manufacturer right now has the ability to, like, if people stop owning cars and they start using these, Lyft or Uber services, and Tesla's the cheapest of them, then the other manufacturers are going to have a really hard time surviving.
That's why Uber's so adamant on making a full self-driving car, because they know they're going to go out of business sooner or later. And I'm not saying like in the next year or something. I'm talking down the line, but they're thinking down the line where if they don't go into FSD, they're going to lose out, right?
Yeah.
Something else I want to touch on, Andy Warrior mentioned, how will insurance be when robotaxi becomes reality? Honestly, we don't really know how laws, regulations, or insurance is really going to play a factor until it happens. So,
well, they're already right now with just what we have for nav on autopilot and stuff like that. Insurance, and I know this because I have someone that I know that works in the insurance industry. They're having trouble right now just wrapping their head around just the safety features of Teslas and these cars and stuff like that, and autopilot and nav on autopilot and stuff like that. They're trying to embrace that, and they're scratching their heads. They're having trouble. So yeah, not even talking about robotaxi or full self-driving. Like,
try calling your insurance company and asking them who's at fault if your car gets into an accident in a parking lot and is driving around with you not in it.
So somebody asked this of Elon at the FSD Investor Day.
Yes.
Like, they asked him, what happens if the car gets into an accident, while it's, like a robotaxi car, right? And he I don't think this is going to hold true long term, but he said probably Tesla. That's what Elon said, right?
Yeah,
So,
I remember. Yeah, you're right. He did say that. But I think he's thinking long term once the car is fully in their control by the computer. Right now, I can probably safely say from a legal standpoint, at least in Canada, I can say that if that happens, it's the person driving or operating, and whether you're operating it from a cell phone or you're operating it from the seat of the driver's seat, you're still considered the operator of that car. So you're going to be at fault.
I'm going to butcher his name again. He said he's talking about robotaxis. He's saying car seats for kids, as well as like wheelchairs and stuff. And he raises a good valid point. Like honestly, I don't know. I would imagine that the robotaxi isn't going to be just like cars. There's going to be like specialized ones for people with special needs who need wheelchairs. You can probably get one that has a car seater. Like it shows up, the car seater is already ready to go. So I guess you'd be like toggles inside your app, if I had to guess. But again, I don't know. They haven't addressed this. I think their biggest problem right now is getting FSD to actually work, and then all those other things can come afterwards. But I'm sure they thought about it. They're a pretty forward-thinking company, and
and you know, all these companies that are in the race are forward thinking, and they're brilliant minds and engineers at work. We can, you know what, we can devote a whole entire show to this topic and just keep talking and everything. But you guys brought up some good points and some good arguments, and people in the chat watching online. Thanks for your input. You guys have brought up some. This is exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the input from the viewers and the guests on the panel, some feedback and interaction. So this is great. Like I said, we could do a whole topic on this a whole night, but we're going to try to move on. But are you're happy to, at the end of the day, Franklin, you're happy to see possible subscription service? Aaron?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And huge shout out to all the people who are interacting. If you guys are watching live, if you don't have an opportunity, subscribe to Daxm. He usually puts them out like half hour early, and try to watch them live, because the interaction is like makes it way more interesting for us. That way, it's not just like us three giving opinions. It's like other people offering opinions of stuff that we didn't really think about at the time. So it's great.
It's great.
Yeah. Like I really appreciate it. And once again, my apologies for not being able to pronounce your name, but apparently it's a hard name. So
okay, moving on to our last topic, because we have a few questions from Mark that I want to get to. He took the time and energy to email me some questions, so I want to get to them and see if you guys can answer them. I haven't even shown you guys them yet. They're very interesting, thought-provoking questions. So our last topic, and we can just touch on this briefly and get to the questions because we're already over an hour in. Is brought to us by our friends at Drives Tesla Canada, and now we're going to end off on this topic or this conversation as a fun, lighted one, because for the most part, I think this is a rumor, but you never know. It could come true. Who knows? So, could Tesla be the actually first place or the first country to get a batch of the Model Y 7-seaters? Can they actually? And the reason why we're asking this, and the guys at Drive Tesla Canada even brought this up, is because of a tweet. And I know anyone can make up a tweet. I'm not saying it's because it's it's on the internet. It has to be real, right, guys? I'm not saying that at all. But a user by the name of Handy TSLA, or Handy Tesla, I guess, he just said that he got a call from Tesla asking if he would be ready to take delivery of his 7-seater Model Y in Q2. And apparently this guy is from Canada. I think Vancouver or Oakville. Those are the two rumored places that a bunch of people. What are you laughing at?
Okay, never mind. The two rumored places. I thought you meant he's from either Vancouver or Oakville. I'm like, well, that really narrows it down.
I know. No, because if you read the article, it wasn't just him. There was a handful of other people that said that they got calls from Tesla, from the salespeople, saying that they were trying to confirm their deliveries for a 7-seater. But the funny thing is, and the reason they make it a rumor that it could be Canada only right now is because these calls came from Canada. No one in the U.S. could verify that they got the same kind of phone calls. So once again, is it one of those things? Because remember when before the Model Y came out, some people were saying online that they got calls from Oakville or Lawrence about the Model Y. And so the speculation there was even maybe we might get them before the US, and that never panned out. So like I said, this is a lighthearted rumor, but you never know. Like it would be something. I think it would tick off a lot of you US people waiting for this 7-seater that if we got it before you did. Would that be a bad thing?
I want them to do the same exact thing, but with the Cybertruck. So they get the all-wheel drive, we get the tri-motor, everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy.
On the topic of the Model Y, Aaron, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and Dax alluded to it already, but we had these rumors before. We actually had tweets saying that people in Canada were getting calls for the Model Y deliveries months back before they started delivering, and it didn't really pan out, right? So I would put a lot of caution on whether this is true or not.
Yeah. Even on, it's funny. I don't want a 7-seater. Eventually, I want a Model Y, but not right now. But not even a 7-seater. But just for the fact of satisfying the argument and the mystery of whether it's going to be forward-facing or rear-facing, that third row, is why I want to see it come sooner than later. I mean, also I want to see anyone who is waiting for a 7-seater. I want to see them get their car, because nothing worse than waiting. We've all done it. We've all had to wait for our cars, but to know that you can finally get your car is a good thing. But I'm very curious to know the difference.
We speculated on it, 3 weeks?
Yeah. We're always talking about it.
Yeah. So I just want to see what it looks like, how it functions, more so than actually caring about. Like, it's great that people are getting it. If that's what they need, that's what they want. Fantastic, great.
Yeah.
But for me, I just want to see what it looks like finally. After all our speculation. Well, I don't know. In terms of Canada getting it, truthfully, I don't know. I just can't see it. Like, why would they make it and then ship it that far if they can ship it close and get sales just as quick?
Yeah. And also, once again, if something's wrong with it, it's closer to the factory. Not that they did that for the Model Y. I know they did that for the Model 3, and they didn't really do for the Model Y. They didn't do the close to the Fremont factory in case there was issues. I mean, it was a smart thing to do when they did with the 3, but they didn't really do it for the Y. Anyways, I just thought you guys would find that a little interesting. Whether it is true or not, I guess only time will tell. But that's all the questions. That's all the topics we have for tonight. And we're an hour and 17. So let's move on to the questions from Mark. Like I said, and I don't think I mentioned it off the top of the show, if you have any questions and you can't be on the show, like watching it live or leave it in the comments below type of thing, you can email me a question anytime throughout the week at your own leisure, whatever. The email address is Tesla Talks with an S, questions also with an S, at gmail.com. So once again, Tesla Talks questions@gmail.com. It's that easy. Shoot me an email. Tell me what your question is. Don't forget to put your name unless you want to remain anonymous, and then you can do that. But shoot me an email, and I can guarantee you we will look at getting it on the podcast and answering it, just like Mark Lindsay did here. And Mark's in the podcast. He's watching us live right now and listening and interacting with us. But he took the time and energy to send me 3 questions. I don't know if you guys can see the questions on your screen there, guys, but we're going to do one at a time. And it doesn't have to be long. We can, and if we don't know the answer, we don't know the answer. We can just move on to the next one. But Mark's first question is do you think the rear-wheel drive Model Y will still be offered? Why do you think it isn't on the Tesla.com anymore, or website anymore?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
He's on the spot.
He's deep in thought.
Yeah. Well, so on the Model 3, I would parallel it to the Model 3 then. So the only rear-wheel drive option right now is what, the SR Plus, maybe the SR as well.
Yeah.
Is there a comparable SR Plus model on the Model Y side? I'm not familiar with the options. So.
No, the options are pretty comparable if you take out the rear-wheel drive long-range Model Y. So basically, if they take out this model, they're comparable across the board.
Right, but is there like an SR Plus comparable Model Y?
There will be.
There will be, yeah.
It's not all
So, so we might see it at that point, but then there's also the other side, which is this is an SUV, so maybe you want all-wheel drive. So I'm not sure.
Well, I think the argument is that for one camp is that they're saying no is because it's not on a website, so they're not doing it. And just like the Model 3, they stopped doing it for the Model 3. And then on the other side of the argument, the other guys that say that there will be it will come is because they had it on reveal day and they showed the specs and they showed the stats and when it'll be available. And some people have already put money down on that particular one. So
it's not even just that they showed it off. There's a huge difference, and it will be coming. I'm very strong. I think strongly about this, mainly because I didn't put in a reservation for a rear-wheel drive long-range Model Y. I put in an order. So, like, I know there's fine print text where they don't have to fulfill the order, but I just don't see them doing that. You got to imagine they're going to fulfill the order that I placed, and they're going to, because I gave them 3,200 for each order, and they're going to have to fill it eventually, I'd imagine. Or do they upgrade me? But if they upgrade me, then aren't people who paid for all-wheel drive going to be upset? Because if I got the upgrade, but at the same time, I'm going to be upset because I don't want to pay more for something I already decided I pay less. So it's a tricky situation. At the end of the day, either they cancel and make a lot of people upset, or they end up making it because, again, it's not a reservation. It's like an actual
So order. This is a crazy thought, but do you think they'll software lock the front motor?
Oh, that would be cost. You're joking, right? I don't know.
I'm half joking.
Yeah, you have to. Who knows? Like, people would say, well, think about it. Years ago, you think they take a battery pack with 100 kilowatts and software lock that, and then we probably got the same chuckles back then, right? But they did it. Who knows?
That's what I'm saying. The battery's the most expensive part, and they're doing it on that. Like,
anyone know out there what a motor costs? A front motor? Because a front motor is smaller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They software lock the battery. They're going to software lock you. You heard it here first.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? You're laughing, but you know what? If it actually happens, you will be knocking on Aaron's door saying, "You're a genius, buddy."
We're going to have to replay the clip, right?
Yeah.
That's a nice thing. This is saved, Aaron? Forever. So you get like
there we go.
Credit. Yeah.
That's what I said, half joking. I'm going to hold on to that, potential.
The half, yeah. 50-50. Now, why it isn't on the website anymore? You know what? I think they may. Here's my theory. They may do a little bit of both of what you're saying, Franklin. Is you ordered, you didn't reserve, you ordered a rear-wheel drive. So they may say, okay, they took it away because they only want to make a limited amount, and once they satisfied the orders and those people, they'll be okay. There's no more available. And you know how Tesla is. They don't give us notice. They just flip a switch from one day to another, right? Like, did they give us notice when the rear-wheel drive was going away for the 3?
Yeah, they kind of did. They made it an off-menu item first, and then eventually they just got rid of it completely. So so you could have just called in to order for a long period of time, and then they got rid of it.
Site though,
yeah. So it was off-site, but you can still call, and then they got rid of it altogether.
Okay. So maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll satisfy the few. Maybe they realize that there weren't a lot of orders for the rear-wheel drive. So they took it off the site. They made a commitment to themselves and customers like you that they'll fulfill that. Like maybe shut down the production line for a certain amount of time and retool it just to make the rear-wheel drive and throw all those out, fulfill those, whether it takes a few weeks or a few months, and then change it back.
I have the silver Model 3. I'm going to have the unicorn.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny you were talking about the silver one earlier at the beginning of the show, and I was thinking about it, and I never thought about it until we were talking about it. Every silver Model 3 you see out there is a rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can't be anything else. You know right away what it is. It's not an SR, not a SR Plus. Actually, wait a minute. Could it be a mid-range? Did they stop the color before the mid-range? I can't remember.
They also had the limited edition. Is that the one you're talking about?
I don't know. I'm confused.
They had the lemur one. When they had the whole lemur thing.
Lemur?
Yeah, they had a limited edition version. They used the whole lemur as their animal.
I don't remember that.
No idea
Anyway.
what you're talking about.
You do or don't? It's okay, never
No.
mind.
I think you got that. Moving on to Mark's number 2 question. Will Tesla partner with or bail out any of the legacy automakers like Ford, who's losing billions right now? And what could Tesla learn from them if they did?
So I saw an interest. It's funny he asked this question because I saw a headline or something a few days ago about how it's actually the reverse. So I think it was like Mercedes-Benz or something in Germany was going to basically be paying for the Gigafactory there because they pay for those offset credits. So the amount of money they're going to pay in offset credits is going to fund the Gigafactory.
like Z credits type of thing.
Yeah, I don't know how it works, but basically, yeah, like
Wow.
they pay the carbon offset credits in Germany, so they're paying them to Tesla, right, or however it works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think what Mark's thinking about now is with the pandemic and the shutdown and everything, how these automakers are, they're bleeding bad, and I heard from the very beginning when this whole shutdown happened weeks ago that the big 3 were the most. They had the most to lose. Like even more so than a small startup. I guess maybe we can't call Tesla a startup anymore, but a small company like Tesla. I mean, we know the Hondas and the Toyotas. Everyone will hurt, but they'll make it through, right? But
So
Chrysler, Fiat, and GMC or GM and Ford, they're rumored that they may not wither the storm here.
let's talk about dinosaurs for a second. Why did dinosaurs go extinct? Because they couldn't adapt to their environment. They couldn't adapt to the change of environment.
Wasn't it a giant asteroid?
I'm gonna say that. I mean, the environment did change, but
The
very
environment
rapidly,
changed.
right?
Yeah, in a second.
Okay, listen, you're ruining what I'm trying to say here. They could not adapt.
To breathing fire.
I'll let you go. No, I know I sort of to ruin your thunder.
Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you can't adapt to change, and sometimes it's very quick, and sometimes it's very slow. It doesn't matter whether it's fast or slow. If you can't adapt to change,
like a meteor,
you're not. What's that? Sorry.
Nothing.
Man, you guys are just I'm done. I'm done with this. I lost my train of thought. Basically, what I'm saying is Tesla can learn that. And Tesla's very good at it currently, whether that changes in, I don't know, 50 years, 100, whatever, however long. Tesla's very good at adapting to change because they have software updates on their car. I mean, you can't get better than that. Literally no other car has that, and that's the whole other discussion in itself. But Tesla's very good at change and keeping up with market trends and adapting to what customers want. I still find it shocking Elon Musk is like the only person who's actively like on Twitter to improve his product. You'd think you'd see more of that. So I think what Tesla can learn is being able to change rapidly enough with things that are happening to stay relevant.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And like I said, sometimes it's very quick change, like an asteroid hitting the Earth, and sometimes it's slower change. So you guys are okay. Go ahead.
Like Ryan says in the comments, like evolution.
I mean, yeah, more or less.
Yeah, no, I see. And all jokes aside, we were just ribbing you there. No, I know exactly what you're saying, and maybe it's which usually is a downfall for Tesla being a new company. Maybe in this case, because they're new and they're so malleable and quick to change, that's what will save them. Whereas these legacy automakers, as you call dinosaurs, they're stuck in their ways. They don't know any other way. Or they're stubborn about it, and they want to continue doing it that way.
Well, I'll take it a step further. Like Tesla's the asteroid, right?
So, good point. Yes.
So, like they're driving the change. It is interesting though. Like when you look at whether some of the auto manufacturers, how they'll come out of this crisis, like this COVID-19 crisis. We had to throw it in the podcast somehow, right? But like looking back at the financial crisis in 2008, Ford was a great opportunity to like, quadruple your money, because they were down to like $4 or something, and then their stock, right, like a year later was up to 16 or something. And it's kind of similar now, but I'm not sure it's actually going to bounce back. Like I don't know if Ford's actually going to bounce back. Like they're relying on the dealer model, which actually kind of hurts them in this crisis because all the dealers basically have to close their storerooms.
How ironic.
And you have to buy from a dealer, and some dealerships are trying to go online, but they're all doing it individually, and it's slow, and it's it's not like who's buying a car online today, really?
Yeah. And they're sitting on stock that's just killing them every week.
The best part about that, Aaron, is I saw articles talking about how it's like revolutionary that you can buy a car online. It's just yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's not here nor there.
No, it's just it just goes to show you it's just how Tesla is, and Ryan in the comments is talking about, and we haven't even talked about this, but because it's such new news, but the earnings call, which is going to be tomorrow, and was it Franklin? Was it you? Somebody sent me just before the show an article how only Tesla in a pandemic could be killing it like they're doing, because apparently they got a new stock rating or projection or something. Me in stocks, I don't know stocks.
It was not me, but
It was you. Okay.
No, I can see that though. Like,
but someone in the comments, I think it was Andy, was saying Tesla should buy Ford for cheap. But I was thinking, and just on Mark's question there, can you imagine if they did buy them or not bail them out, but bought them? Would that mean Tesla owns some of Rivian?
Well,
right?
Rivian, I think, is still an unproven competitor, right? Until they actually have a factory working and cars coming off of it. Like they've been talking. I've heard about Rivian for years now, and the car, it looks nice, but where are they?
Yeah.
I don't know what Tesla gets from buying any other manufacturer, really. Like,
no,
because it's not a subscription model. Like other manufacturers don't have a subscription model with their clients. Like you're not buying the clients.
Yeah, true.
There's a part of this question we haven't covered. Do you think anyone will bail out Ford, like government or something?
Oh, you know what? They'll get bailed out, just like in 2008, where they got bailed out then, and here in Canada, they got bailed out and they never had to pay back the money, or they ended up not paying back the money, which annoyed me to no end, like GM, and then GM ended up leaving here in the GTA. So that's another topic. Let's move on. Hopefully we answered that question in a roundabout way, Mark. Let's move on to your last question, which is, will Tesla offer a version of its own app store like Apple for in-car entertainment while parked? Now this is up your alley, guys.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. How far out would it be?
Elon Musk said, I remember a tweet, he said 5 million cars, because that's the number of cars that you need for it to be reasonable, because you have to build a infrastructure, which costs money. You have to build like security and just like a whole database of stuff, APIs and all sorts of stuff. So this is going to be costly. And then you need developers who are going to develop stuff for the car, which is seems plentiful right now. But would developers develop something for an ecosystem that only had 1 million potential buyers? So you kind of need people that are going to be able to buy, and you need like 5 million is the marker, basically. That's what I'm guessing. They are developing it. I know that for a fact, but I can't comment more about that. And one of their biggest missteps with it is storage in the car. They're going to eventually allow you to plug in a SD or a drive of some sort into the USB port, and that's going to give you extended or more hard drive space, basically. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I can comment.
You're such a tease.
Frankly, you'll have to talk to me after.
Yeah. No, you either say it here, Franklin, or you don't say it at all. I'm kidding. I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just
listen. I can just tell you truthfully that they are working on it.
Yeah.
That's. I'll tell you that.
Okay, Aaron. Anything to add to that?
I think it'll just be, like, well, as Franklin said, it's going to be you need to have a strong enough user base that, developers will actually have, a motivation for building the apps.
Yeah.
But the other part is, and the part that Tesla is concerned about, obviously, and they're having to be very careful developing this, is how do you make sure that it doesn't cause like the apps that you install don't cause problems or don't cause security issues.
Sandbox, yeah.
Like there's two kind of security issues there. There's one which is like a denial of service security issue where the app is just really slow and really inefficient and it causes your whole interface to like just lock up. And there's the other side, which is, does the app have access to your GPS? Does it have access to break out of whatever sandbox and, open your frunk remotely?
Did you catch that?
Stuff, like, what's that?
Did you catch that? Dax called it a sandbox.
Yeah,
I know.
I was quite impressed.
Yeah.
We'll talk off air because you guys don't give me credit sometimes. I learn a lot. I learn a lot from credit for hire.
I just gave you credit. I don't know how much more credit you can get.
So Mark, thanks very much for giving us those questions because it's good food for thought and it's a good, healthy discussion. So thanks for that. Like I said, guys, anyone has a question, email me to the email I told you about, Tesla Talks questions at gmail.com, or just leave a comment down below in YouTube, whatever video, and just let me know it's for the future podcast or a podcast coming up, and I will definitely get these guys to talk about it. But that wraps up another show because we're at 1 hour and 35 minutes plus. Thanks everyone at home that's been watching and listening. Anyone that's listening to this after the fact on the audio podcast, thanks for tuning in. Catch us here every week. Aaron, you're a special guest tonight. I'll let you go first. Thanks very much for coming on, by the way. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me. It was a blast. Yeah.
Where can people find you on the interweb?
Here, just on Twitter. That's basically it.
Right.
So for the radio listeners, it's at Aaron Brighton. It's my Twitter handle. Yep.
He always puts out good tweets. Franklin, let's not do this again this week, okay? Where can people? Oh, you said just wait.
Oh yeah, just wait. One of these weeks, I'm gonna superimpose you on my screen. I'm gonna set it all up, and there's gonna be you talking about your channel, where to find you. Just wait, I'm gonna do it.
Where can people find Mother Frunker, Franklin?
I'm Frunker on Twitter, and then Mother Frunker on the YouTube.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Dax, where can people find you?
I was just, I was gonna appease you and let you know. People can find me right here on the exact same channel that you're watching or listening to. But if you're listening and you're not watching, you can find me on YouTube under Daxm. Happy, Franklin?
Anywhere else?
You can find me on Twitter at Tesla Talks. I think it's Tesla_Talks. I can't remember. Just search for it. You'll find it. And on Facebook, I run various Facebook groups. For Tesla, for the Model Y, the Model 3, the Cybertruck, stuff like that. So you can find me anywhere on social media. I think I even have a Instagram account, which I'm guilty for not using very often. I apologize. But that's where you can find me. Thanks very much, guys,
Thanks, guys.
Listen, folks listening at home, next week, I know I should have said this at the beginning of the show and not wait for the very last minute. Next week, we have a special guest on the show. I'm not going to tell you who it is right now, just in case things don't work out. But check it out. Check us out next week because it's going to be a very special show and a very special guest. I'll give you a hint. They've been on, and I didn't say he or she. They've been on before, and they were so popular. I'm going to bring them back. Thanks for watching, guys. We will catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys, for helping me out on this one. Take care.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye-bye.
See ya.